All right. This is I guess you can call it the pilot of the podcast I'm starting. I'm Nicole, and it's going to be the Nicole Howard Show. I am going to be talking about my life, my family, and what's going on in the world, and just subjects out there. Anything. I have some subjects I'd like to focus on, but just to give you a little insight into me, I live in northern Michigan, near Traverse City. I have a cat named Anakin Skywalker who will make appearances. I have no control over what he does. He's a cat, so he'll show up from time to time. As well as a horse named Han Solo. And my mom owns his half brother, Norman, which they live here on the property. Their barn is actually just about 40 feet that way. And I'll have some maybe videos of them as well occasionally. At this point, I think one of the biggest things I want to talk about, because as I have a gift for gab, I was actually, my nickname when I was a kid was Chatterbox. I like to talk a lot about what's going on in the world, and everyone's sick of talking to me about it, basically. And it's been suggested a podcast would be great. Actually, for years, I've been told I should write a book. And the reasoning behind that is some of the goings on in my life. I am in recovery from drugs and alcohol, 8 years as of March, and I have some stories that are pretty unbelievable, for lack of another word. Um, so, we'll talk about recovery. I have a friend, actually, also that works an interesting job where she has to deal with basically what's going on in the world of dating and men and women and how society has just changed so much. At least since I was really out there. I mean, I'm single, but um, I don't go out to the bar. I don't drink, so I have no reason to do that. Not that that's a good place to meet someone, for the record. Bit of advice. And I've made that mistake maybe more than once. Uh, in any case, also a little bit about me. I got sober, like I said, 2017, right after Trump won the first time. And though I will get back, I do lose track sometimes of where I'm going, but I'll loop back. I am a Republican. I don't agree with everything in this administration, but it's a lot better than the latter. In any case, after I got sober, 2017, I started having some very strange, odd symptoms occur. And that's when I finally figured out, after actually COVID had hit, when they finally figured it out, I have MS. And then COVID, on top of the MS, gave me a really unique, fun little condition that took almost 3 years to solve, where it looked like Mike Tyson once a month had a go at me and beat me up. He didn't. I have nothing against Mike Tyson, for the record. But, a good boxer had targeted my face, and all triggered by COVID. So I have some interesting health issues, which will be another thing maybe you can talk about on my show. But again, I think one of the main things I'd like to focus on is probably, I like politics and what's going on in the world. Not even politics, just common sense and where people's heads are these days. Um, for instance, today, I'll try and get back onto my introduction, but today, one of the biggest things I saw was Biden's son did a podcast and made sure to drop as many F bombs as he could, which, I used to swear a lot. I still sometimes do. I try not to. I was told it just made me look classless and, to represent myself with a little bit more honor. But in any case, talking about the immigrants and it's just so entitled sounding. Who's gonna clean up our place, clean my house and do our dishes and mow our lawns. Well, how about, I'm sorry, you just pay Americans or someone that immigrated here the proper way a proper amount of money to do it, instead of paying someone hardly anything because that's what they expect, because that's what they're used to in the country they came from, which I'm pretty sure they escaped their country where they got paid horribly to get paid a little better. So, but they should do it properly. And I actually last month, a lady Democrat, again, I'm not bashing Democrats here. That's not what my show's about. But I don't agree with this far left wing ridiculousness that's going on with that party. Sat on stage at another time. I'll have more information and look up her name, saying how, this is why they let them in, because who else, pardon the vulgar adage of what she used, who else is going to wipe our butts? And I thought, ugh, wow, that is so embarrassing to even say, if that's their reasoning and what they're thinking and why they did, the party for the last 4 years allowed so much chaos to happen at the border. But anyway, it's all wrong. It's inappropriate. It's wrong. And, here we've been watching people that came into our country get treated better than our own American citizens. I know of people that are really struggling and they don't qualify for certain assistance with things. And then we've got people staying at a five-star hotel in New York City and having everything paid for. And then they have the audacity to complain that they're not getting their native food provided for them. I mean, but you've heard it all. That's one thing I have on my mind to talk about. Anyway, back to, so I grew up, I actually was born down in Rochester, Michigan area, Rochester Hills, Troy, and then I lived in Leonard, and when I was 7, we moved up to Traverse City. So I've been living here since then. I live out in the country where it's quiet, away from the city. When I did live in the city, I owned my own house at one point in 2005. That's where I got into some of the most chaos in my life. I was in the uphill battle into my issues, and probably where some of my biggest stories come from. And it was good to get out of the city. Now, my parents live next door to me. Actually, this home is an apartment in a pole barn, outside of the pole barn. I will also have some evidence of that to prove at some point going down the road with this. Again, this is my first podcast. I'm going to clean it up. I'm just speaking my mind while I sit here and launch this thing. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully I have some followers and people start to like me, and I want this to go live and we can have a conversation. Actually, one of my biggest favorite shows actually is The Big Bang Theory, and Fun with Flags is Sheldon's baby, and then Amy got brought in on it. Actually, Amy joined him in the first episode. What are we thinking? He eventually added her name to it. But Sheldon was the big fan. Phil Flags, that's what my reasoning for saying his baby. And so they started the show out by, I remember watching it the first time, I thought, that's very interesting how he's doing that. Eventually they could take in callers. That's how they morphed the show into a way of just communicating with people, which most of their callers were actually their friends. So, yeah, big fan of Big Bang Theory. Actually, you'll notice Star Wars, big fan of that. Game of Thrones, Harry Potter, and like I said, this thing I'll clean it up, do the best I can. But the podcast, writing a book, I just don't have the attention span. I work out every single day. You can see some of my exercise equipment behind me, and I thought of doing, maybe while I work out, doing one of those technologies where you talk while you have the, speak to text type of technology. Yeah, but I don't have the attention span to even do that. Plus, it's really hard to talk while you're working out. I mean, I have some good lungs, but it starts getting winded. So this was my. I mean, everyone's doing podcasts. In fact, my mom, like I said, we got horses, and I grew up with horses my whole life. My first horse, well, it wasn't mine, but when I was 3, we had a horse when I was born, but the first horse I ever rode when I was 3 was George, and he was 3, same age as me. Um, my mom follows a lady who has a podcast, and this woman has miniature donkeys as her specialty. She also has some very expensive horses. She just goes around with her video camera on the farm every day talking. I don't even know what she looks like. I'm not sure if she ever has shown herself, but she shows her animals and just going through, and she's got babies being born, and if you join you get early access, and she's got millions of followers, this woman. And my mom, she doesn't follow, but she does check in and watch it. She does the free version. And if that lady can do it, yeah, I should be able to do this. And I'm not insulting any of the other podcasts out there, but some of them are a little wacky. Hopefully, well, my mind might be a little wacky, depending on the topic of the day. Uh, so, back to my story. Living out the country, single, have some health issues, but I deal with them. I do, um, like I said, working out. I just saw my neurologist. He said one of the best things for someone with MS is to keep moving. You got to keep your body in motion. And, I've always heard the saying, a body in motion stays in motion, yada, yada, yada. Um, Another show, Seinfeld. That's what that's from. I have a sister. She doesn't speak to me. Once I got sober and cleaned my act up, that's when she decided no longer to speak to me. I apologized. I wrote her a letter, done it all. She still doesn't want to talk to me. So that's her loss, I guess. And as it transpires, not that this would make me not be in her life. I just can't believe some of the people that during Thanksgiving that said it was okay to not go to your family's Thanksgiving if you didn't agree with their political party. I mean, come on. But she is a complete other end of the spectrum when it comes to politics. And I don't know how, because she grew up in a Republican household. So we don't, none of us know what happened. Other than, you know what? I take that back a little bit maybe. But again, she was so around us all the time, and just thought like us. But she's a child more of the younger social media, internet raising the youth of America child. And her friends, that's the way they think. And she's joined the sheep. She's a sheep. And I think a lot of what's going on in America, I've told my friends, is people are sheep. I think if, for instance, in Hollywood, George Clooney, if George Clooney, maybe a couple others, were to suddenly say, I like Trump. And I mean, there have been some people that have come out and, I think Bill Maher, he said he was okay, went and met with him. He hasn't necessarily said he's the best guy on the planet, but opened his mind up to it. Um, but some of these big names in Hollywood switched the conversation into being for Trump. I think it would be amazing how quickly people would pile on. I could be wrong. Maybe they would double down, but uh, who knows? It'll never happen, because there's just that's far before Trump ever entered the arena. Hollywood has, for a long time, been, generally speaking, to the left. But again, the right of today is very similar to the left of yesterday. It's just now the left has become full of this extreme, women having men playing women's sports. And God, if my mom, if things had been like they are now when I was in school, because she was very part of anything going at school, she volunteered, she would have been relentless and not put up with some of this stuff. And I don't know how far she could have gotten, because some of the things have been so crazy out there with parents who step in and say, I'm not going to tolerate that. Yeah, she would have been. In fact, quick story. When I was in school, probably at the very beginning when things started to occur, actually, I was out of elementary school. My sister was still there. The uh, school, the elementary school I went to in Interlaken, had a family that was from another country, and every year, every classroom was asked to make an ornament, and then the ornament um, gets put on the Christmas tree, and then that tree gets sent to Traverse City to the park place for the festival of trees, and they do it just before Thanksgiving, and the best tree wins, and then you send it back to the school, and until Christmas it sits there in the entry of everybody's elementary school. And it's cool as a kid. You walk by, and oh, there's my ornament. It's exciting. And it's also fun for when the parents come to school to pick up their kids. You get to see their kids' ornament. And then after the tree comes down, they send the ornament home with the kid. One family who had only been at that school maybe a year, I believe, didn't celebrate Christmas and went to the principal and said it was an insult to her and her religion to have that tree up when she didn't celebrate Christmas and to take it down. Which my mom did get involved in that and said, if you take that down, you realize you're being ridiculous. For one family, you're going to upset every other kid in school. And why don't you say, go ahead and put up whatever you celebrate? We'd be fine with that. Nope. She wanted the tree down. And he, because of just the climate that was starting to occur at that time and the pressure from other school, speaking to other people, they said this could turn into something bigger, and he was forced to take this thing down. And it was my sister's last year there, but every kid was so bummed. Where's the tree? Why aren't our ornaments out? And so, yeah, that was the beginning, right around, that was 2001, I believe. Well, 2000, going into 2001. No, I take it back. It was 2001. Yeah, going into 2002 when that happened. Anyway, I started out, by the way, so I went to, once we moved up here in 1990, I ended up going to Traverse City Schools. And then in my 10th grade year, transferred out to a little school called Glen Lake because we had moved out into the country. And so I went from being in a big 500 people graduating class to under 70. Big adjustment. Plus, it was a K through 12, so I would see my younger sister, who was 7 years younger than myself, in the hallways. And then she would act like she didn't know me. Like, it was embarrassing for the elementary student to see the high school student walking through the hallways. I thought, really? Well, that's not very nice. Yeah. I remember the first day that happened, I thought, either I'm not cool or something's going on. I still wonder that, though. I think I'm hilarious, and I don't know, I'm not really sure if I'm cool or not, but I do have a lot to say. I have a lot of fun stuff to talk about. And like I said, I'll try and stay as focused as I can, but this will be a lot more fun when I can have people talking back to me. So I'm going to wrap this up and get this posted and see what the feedback is. And hopefully start a show. Again, everybody, well, here, okay, the Nicole Howard Show, my reasoning for that name. So when I was in junior high at the bigger school and then transferred out to the smaller school in high school, for some odd reason, everybody, not just friends, the teachers would call me Nicole Howard. And I remember my 7th grade math teacher, well, he would sometimes just call me Howard because he used to be a football coach. I got that one. But yeah, I'd be walking through the halls, hi, Nicole Howard. And I'd think, why does everybody call me that? Now, there were 4 Nicoles in my class at one year. But they all went by different names. Nikki, Nicole, Nick, maybe only, yeah. So there was only 2 Nicoles and then a Nick and a Nikki, which I do not like to be called Nikki. I've never liked it. In fact, when my aunt married my uncle when I was 5, he constantly kept calling me Nikki. And my cousin's dog which my cousin, he'll be, I'll have to get him on here one time because he's my mom's brother's son. He and I are pretty much like, I don't have any brothers. He's like a brother to me, my cousin August. And he's like me, and well, I guess I can say this. He's in recovery as well, and was down in Georgia, and very talented person. He's hilarious. I can't believe he hasn't made it to Hollywood and become a big star because he's just great. Anyway, my cousin's dog's name was Nikki. So finally, I was like, why do they keep? I didn't understand. My hair is driving me nuts. The concept of shortening a name. And my mom tried to explain it to me, and I just, as a young age, at a young age, I've always complicated things in my head. Uh, I'm academically very always a good academic achiever. Um, but I am terrible when it comes to, like, I don't get jokes. I look way too deep into them and tear them apart, and it's not a joke anymore. And test taking, I would like teachers to say, why did you erase the right answer? Because I'd always think, I got it too quickly. It must be a trick question. Um, so that was always one of my challenges. Plus, they did not diagnose me for ADD when I was in school. I don't know how they missed it. It's very clear. So I'm being called Nikki, and I didn't understand the concept of shortening a name. And everyone on my dad's side of the family loves to shorten names. I mean, even someone's name was already shortened, they'll shorten it even more. Finally, on their wedding day, I believe it was, he tried to call me Nikki one more time, and I stomped my foot and I said, "My name's not Nikki, it's Nicole." And he never did it again and remembered the story. Um, yeah, I don't like that name. It doesn't bother me when other people have that name. That's fine. It's just at a young age, I didn't like it for myself. And yeah, this is how my brain worked. When I found out I wanted to get bangs when I was a kid, and my uh, mom said, I said, "How do you get bangs?" And my mom said, "Oh, you just pull your hair forward out of your forehead and then cut across your forehead." And I said, "Was there blood?" And my mom, "No, there's no blood. Why would there be blood?" So because you're cutting across the forehead. And it wasn't until years later I was able to explain to her, this is how my mind worked, that you pulled these bangs out of the forehead after having sliced open and finding this hair that's growing inside the forehead. And then they're really long, and then you shorten them by cutting them. And that's what I thought. So I was terrified of getting bangs for years. Because I thought, I don't want to have my forehead sliced open. And won't it scar? And I'm not sure, to be honest with you, why my mom didn't inquire more into my question about the bleeding. But she didn't, for whatever reason. Maybe it's because I asked a lot of odd questions. I was one of those kids that would say, "But why? What are you doing?" "I'm cleaning the kitchen." "But why?" "To get it clean." "But why?" And I still do it too. It makes people a little nuts. I'm inquisitive. I like to learn stuff, and learn about, how do things work. And anyway, that's how that's how we learn. And I think that I have a best friend in school. Her mom was on marriage number two, and she married a lawyer. And I said, "What kind of lawyer is he?" And she goes, "I don't know." I go, "She's been married for like 4 years to him, and you don't know what he does exactly?" And she said, "No." I said, "Why haven't you asked?" She goes, "I don't know." It took me another year to get her to finally find out. Actually, I think I'm the one that found out when we were all together and just asked him. I don't remember what it was, but in any case, it was something simple. Uh, and all my friends that I grew up with, I'm not in communication with anymore. We all just went our separate ways. I did a lot of destruction in my life. And then, like I said, this might be a topic to discuss, getting your life back together after you've destroyed it from drugs and alcohol. Um, so many of my friends and I, either I'm not friends with them because they may not necessarily be good for me, or I lost them in the chaos of what was going on with me, either from just lack of contact or I mean, I don't want to say I did anything horrible to anybody, and especially when I did my apologies. Um, Most of it was silly stuff, but well, I shouldn't say silly. Most of it was owing people money or something I'd done to them in high school. Just having uh, remembered just being kind of a crappy friend. Some of that stuff, and again, some of it was money things and being a bad employee, things like that. Um, I did have to do, make amends for. And so I've lost some of my friends, but it's too bad because my one friend I had a great time with. I have my other best friend. Um, she's got a bunch of kids, lives in another part of the country. She reached out to my mom once, I think, and I don't know. I don't know what came of it. I don't really even talk to my family that much because we're all just such different people in different places in their life. So maybe, maybe they'll start listening to this podcast and maybe it'll bring us all closer. And, I know people are just a phone call away. And, a lot of my family, well, on one side, the younger, my sister's age, really, people, they kind of party and stuff, but that's fine. I mean, I can be around drinking, so that's not an excuse. It really is important. Now that well, this is what I was going to touch on. I live next door to my family. We have a very, uh, the word I would use would be, it's very tumultuous. It's a challenging relationship. I love my parents. They helped me a lot through some of my rough times. They also were extremely hard on me during some of my rough times. And they still continue to be hard about stuff because they owned a company while I was growing up. That's what bought all the property, and the house that they had at one point, which they ended up during COVID selling, but they kept half of it. So now they finally just this year built a second house, but the other house is down on the lake, so there's somebody else living at that place, which has got to be very frustrating to see him go by down to their old house. And I hope that someday they have the money to get back where they were at that point. However, so now there's a lot of arguments about money. Money comes up when you live with and people listening. If you live with family, I should say, live in an apartment or something that's attached to family owning where your money goes, it can get rough. And I'm doing my best, but it seems like we've had more of a landlord tenant relationship, and my dad and I, we are like oil and water with each other. Except sometimes we're very similar, and we it's like he triggers. We just so this weekend was spent with he and I kind of getting into it a little bit over cleaning out. All their stuff was stored in my garage while they built their house, and they're finally, after 7 months, getting it out. My garage has been spilled, and I can squeeze my vehicle in. Um, so yeah, there's some family stuff that I'll talk about. And like I said, my sister doesn't talk to me, but well, I'm used to that. So I've been rambling for a while now. I am going to post more than this one, and I hope they keep getting better because this seems like it went on for a while. But I wanted to do a half an hour for my first post. And again, talk politics, talk about animals. Actually, animals is a really good thing to talk about too because I love animals. I have a lot of knowledge about animals. Um, I'll have a focus maybe for each day. I'm working on this as I go. But I hope you enjoyed listening. And I think I'm going to take off here. Again, The Nicole Howard Show with occasional appearances from Anakin Skywalker. That's my cat. He's all black with one white toe. He looks like Darth Vader. It's the name Anakin. And the one white toe is a little bit of good still in him that helped him save Luke. So that's why he's Anakin. And when I got him, I was really into watching those movies because at the time I didn't have cable. So I was watching anything I owned, and I owned the whole set up to that point. At that point, they only done the very old ones and then the Hayden Christensen version. So anyway, um, yeah. So this has been very fun. Thank you for joining me again. I'm gonna start posting these each day and hopefully get live going. And I'm shooting for around 7 o'clock. So thank you again very much and have a great night. Mm-hmm.